Basically, I help nonprofits, with marketing communications, with online fundraising. My career has been mostly working for for-profit companies, software, healthcare, and so forth. And about 9 years ago, I made the leap from the dark side to the nonprofit side. And amazingly, I could sleep at night. It's incredible. And so today what we're going to talk about, we're actually going to have two different sessions. One is we're going to start by talking about using social media, right? Facebook and Instagram in particular, but a lot of these tactics and strategies you can apply to really any social network. And also, you can apply these to any situation throughout the year, right? One thing I love about Giving Days, and I've worked with lots of organizations, one thing I love about Giving Days is that it's not only, in a sense, the short-sighted view is, it's a chance for us to ask for money, right? That's the short-sighted view. The long-sighted view, or the long-term view, is we're going to engage our constituents on their terms, we're going to better understand them, and we're also going to develop more capacity in terms of communication, all right? Now, why is that important? So, marketing obviously has changed a lot. How many people have seen this show, Mad Men? Okay, I love Mad Men. It's my favorite show. You have to watch it. Basically, it talks about 60s kind of Madison Avenue advertising executives. Don Draper is essentially modeled after this guy, David Ogilvy, who is a big, huge name in marketing and advertising. And so that's really changed, though, right? So if you were alive then, and even through the 70s and 80s, you realize that marketing essentially was a tagline, maybe colors on if you had a website, maybe websites started 2000, so that's even more recent, right? So all this stuff is really recent. But the big thing that's changed is the job of the marketer, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. It's no longer about the coffee mug. Hey, check out the coffee mugs. We got the logo on the coffee mug. Look at our tagline. It's so much more. You have to be, in a sense, a publishing house. Each nonprofit essentially has to be a newspaper. You have to publish stories consistently. Either you're doing a combination of creating stories or curating stories, finding stuff that your community is going to love, okay? So the job has really changed. It's something that requires a total shift in how marketers think, how communicators think, and how fundraisers think. The other thing that's changed radically, and I'll get into this in a little bit, is that for the first time in human history, literally, I'm talking for the past, say, humans have been around for what, 1 million years, 500,000 years, 100,000 years, however you define human beings. Basically, for the first time, me, as an individual, I can tell limitless numbers of people anything I want. Okay? Here's what I had for breakfast. Who cares? Right? Here's a picture of my dog. Here's a cause I care about. Right? So we can all do that. Everybody has that ability. This is incredible. This has never happened before, ever, in the history of human beings. Right? Up until, I would say, mid-2000s, 2005, it was really one way. We'd go to a website, we'd look at a website. If we had comments on it, we could leave a comment, but who knows what's going to happen with a comment. Now, we can create a whole blog about how much we disagree with this nonprofit, or how much we disagree with this brand. So we can have a pretty big voice online, and I think that's really important to take advantage of that. And I'll talk about, how that works. So the agenda for the first half is,
I was going to
what are you going to do?
getting this.
Oh,
I didn't want to.
this is Michael, by the way. Yay! All right. So we're going to talk about Instagram and Facebook strategies, community network crowd, bragging about your nonprofit doesn't work, stop posting content, busy little marketers, busy little interns, and start telling stories. And then I'll talk about 7 ways to post better updates, 7 types of updates you should always be posting, using Facebook Live and Instagram Stories, and then working with a content calendar. So we're going to talk about a lot of very tactical stuff that you can use right away. I'm going to take a quick poll. How many people here are what you could call accidental marketers. So you've had a job, you're just the accounting person, and suddenly someone told you, maybe because you look young and hip, that you're supposed to manage Facebook, right? But you see what I mean, right? So a lot of people, how many people have a formal marketing kind of education and experience? 1.5 people. Come on, right? That's not a lot, right? So a lot of people are kind of learning as they do. And I think there's some fundamental principles that we all need reminders about. Okay, so I'm going to cover those as well, right? So Instagram and Facebook strategies, I'm going to define for you just so that we're all on the same page. And sorry about the type, it's a little blurry, okay? It's not your eyes, it's the screen, it's the projector. But let's talk about the community, the network, and the crowd, first of all. There's not just a bunch of people. It's not just this vague mass of people that you're trying to communicate with. These are very specific groups of people. And I'll define them because you can't read what's on the screen, okay? So maybe you can jot it down. It's not printed out in a slide. You will get the slides later on, okay? But the community is the most important group. The community, as I define it, is basically anybody in your database, okay? Anybody you have an email for. And these would be donors, volunteers, newsletter subscribers, and so forth, right? And why is this the most important group? This is a pop quiz. Who wants to answer that question? Why is this the most important group?
Because they love us.
Yes. Who said that? Excellent. They like, know, and trust you already.
Dogs.
Yes, exactly. And then the next group outside of that is the network, okay? Now the network is really important today, especially because of social media, because the network is basically the friends of your community, okay? Now we don't have direct access to the network. We wish we could. We wish we could talk to everyone, but we can't. But what we want to do is we want to create a situation where our community, our people that love us, they can't help but talk about us with their friends. That's what we want to do. That's precisely the reason for social media. I don't want to say the reason, but that's the strength of social media, particularly Facebook. There's a lot of research on word-of-mouth marketing, which, by the way, is the oldest form of marketing ever, right? Check it out. You show me how to grow tomatoes, and I'm going to show you a really great fishing hole. I don't know how old tomatoes are, but and I don't grow tomatoes. But, it's that kind of reciprocity that is so ingrained in our DNA, right? So that's the network. Now the crowd, these are people, this is basically anyone and everyone on the planet that's possibly interested in your cause, but they're not in the network and they're not in the community. You could include them as well, But basically crowd is everyone who might possibly care about your cause, okay? For you guys, I would say crowd is anybody in Western Mass who cares about your community, unless you're like a national organization, okay? So how are we going to approach these people? The community, these are our strategies, okay? These are our strategies from 30,000 feet. The community, what we want to do is we want to seek to understand them. Why do you support our organization? Why do you love us so much, right? You want to know that. You want to understand why people tick, because you want to find people, more people, just like them, right? How many times have you said to yourself, wow, our donors are so great. Oh, I love Mary. She's always so supportive, and she volunteers, and she gives money, and oh, she's so great. How can we find more people just like that? That's the network, right? We get Mary talking to her friends, okay? So, but I think, I've worked with hundreds of organizations actually over the past 9 years, and one big mistake that organizations make in general is that they assume. What happens when you assume? We all know that, right? They assume, oh, well, our people naturally care about this, so we're just going to start blabbing. We're going to start talking. No, you can't do that, okay? In the Mad Men days, you kind of had to take Don Draper's word for it, Okay, we're going to start doing these ads and whatnot based on some research and focus groups and all that. But now, you can actually listen and see what people are saying using the web. You can find this out, right? So you want to seek to understand, you want to ignite conversations, and you want to give them reasons to share about your cause, okay? Now the network, naturally they're going to hear about your nonprofit through your engaged community, okay? And then through the crowd is this bigger thing. You can reach these folks with advertising, native ads. How many people are familiar with the term native advertising? Native advertising, okay, one person, all right. So native advertising is like the duck. It looks like a duck, it walks like a duck, it sounds like a duck, but it's not a duck. And what I'm talking about is, and as an example, on Facebook, you'll see an update, and it looks like, oh, that looks like a social media update. It's got a picture, text, description, and so forth, and a link, but it has this tiny little word that says sponsored, okay? So it looks exactly like content. That's how advertising works today. It looks exactly like content, and that's what people engage with, okay? So bragging about your nonprofit doesn't work. How many people agree with that? Okay. How many people think we definitely have to brag about our nonprofit, and that's the best thing to do? Okay, one person over there. All right, you can leave. No. So I'm going to tell you the key right away, okay? The key, the trick, because social media is kind of a mystery, right? You know, we post something. I bet you this woman says this all the time. We post stuff on Facebook, bragging, and nobody really does anything. Nobody says anything. Nobody shares our stuff. Nobody likes it. What's going on? And that's because we don't understand the key. And the key is to stop bragging. If you brag about your organization, we're so great. Sometimes I feel like organizations do this from a place of insecurity, right? I heard some heads nodding, like creaky necks. I heard the heads nodding. And, you know, it's a place of insecurity. Like, well, yeah, we're great. And yes, you're great. Have confidence, right? But sometimes there's this thing about like, well, let's tell people everything that we do, everything that's great. Okay, we got to share everything. So stop trying to make your organization look a certain way. Your organization is trying to project how great you look. You're so cool. You're so inspired. You're so connected. Your organization is just amazing. Look, it's amazing, okay? It's amazing. But bragging about it is really not going to work because people will fall asleep, as you've seen already, okay? How many people have done this? Or have heard a board member say this? It's our 100-year anniversary. We've got to do something. Clearly, it's amazing, right? It's a snooze fest, okay? It really is. The 100-year anniversary is not really compelling. That's like a by the way. You know, we're going to have this big celebration to really focus on the impact that we've made in the community, and these really incredible people, our volunteers, we're going to celebrate them. And by the way, we're doing this on our 100th year anniversary, you know, so that's really the better approach. So what is the key, right? So I'm saying stop bragging, and what you want to do is you want to start making your supporters look like the hero, okay? Now, I see a lot of people writing this down, and I'm going to show you exactly what this means, okay? What you want to do is you want to think about how do we make our supporters look a certain way to their friends, okay? And there's a very specific reason for this. We want to make our supporters look fulfilled, inspired, connected, valued, in the know. I know something that you don't know. Sexy. We all want to look sexy in some way, right? Not the Don Draper sexy. Yes.
Wrong.
Wrong, yeah. Okay, well, I'm saying, when I say sexy, I mean hip, whatever, however you define that. In the group, I'm in the group, you're not in the group, that kind of thing, okay? And this actually goes back to, so here's some examples, actually, of content that people will share, okay? So this first one up here on the left, being liberal, and I'm going to read the sign. Journalism is printing what someone else does not want printed. Everything else is public relations. George Orwell. Okay? So when I share this, if I share this, I would be doing it because it made me look a certain way. Okay? I care about free speech. And here's a cool picture that really captures that idea. That's going to make me look like that to my friends. okay? Same thing with these other, mercy for animals, right? This article says 7 social justice leaders you never knew were veg or vegan, okay? And so that, the person that's going to share that is, hey, I'm a vegan who cares about social justice, right? That's what they're going to do. It's going to make them look a certain way to their friends. And if you don't believe me, you probably believe Carl Jung, okay? So who knows who Carl Jung is? Everybody knows who Carl Jung is? Okay, great. All right, so Carl Jung had this idea, basically, and this is not his quote, by the way, okay? But if he was alive today, he would say this. This would be his quote if he was alive today, okay? Social media isn't about making your brand look great, it's about making your supporters look great. So Carl Jung has this theory he talks about called persona theory, okay? Persona theory is a very real thing when we think about it. How many people posted on social media today? Okay, already people have posted something on social media. And you've done that because you want to look a certain way to your friends. That's basically what persona theory says, okay? Even though we don't admit it, we are publishing stuff on social media, either sharing it or publishing it outright to shore up our public persona, okay? Before social media existed, we did not have this opportunity, okay? But the public persona still existed, right? At home, when we're alone, we have our own thoughts about ourselves and our own relationship with ourselves. But as soon as we leave the house, boom, public persona goes into action. We're constantly trying to impress people. And again, this is subconscious or unconscious, but I'm sure most of you would agree, you know, maybe hesitantly, that yes, you do try to impress people with a certain image of yourself, okay? So this is, when we describe this, when I talk about this, and if Carl Jung, you know, heard this, he would say, yeah, this is all about why people post on Facebook, right? The reason why, for example, who's had a bad date recently? I'm not going to, you don't have to raise your hand, but let's just say you have a really bad date, it goes wrong, and it's so horrible, and you know what, you're really depressed at home, and you're going through your second pint of Ben & Jerry's, right? Are you going to share that online? Probably not, okay? But if you go and see a cool movie, or if you, a cool movie that was in the Oscars, hey, I just saw this movie, right? If you're a movie lover and you care about that and you want to look a certain way to your friends, which everybody does, you're going to do that, okay? Now, there's a little bit more about persona theory. You can click on a link in the slides, and you guys will get the slides later on. But essentially, the nutshell of this is that people share on social media because they are shoring up their public self. That's basically what it is. They're shoring up a public persona on a subconscious, unconscious level, okay? So people haven't changed, by the way, okay? People are still the same. That's the good news. At a conference, conferences, sometimes I'll get asked, John, what can you tell us about the latest and greatest thing that's coming up, And I said, listen, don't worry about that. If you understand human beings, that's the most important thing, because human beings won't be changing for a very long time, okay? We're still the same. We still have to like, know, and trust an organization. We still want to shore up our public persona. Now we have great new tools like Facebook and Instagram to do that, right? So this is important. So the takeaway with this is when you share something on social media, when you post something on your own pages, think to yourself, would I share this with my friends? Would I share this with my friends? How does this make our supporters look to their friends? And going back to my first point, understanding your supporters, if you understand your supporters and what their motivations are, this kind of problem or challenge becomes a lot easier. If you understand what are their motivations, what are they sharing, okay? So I'm just making persona statements here. I care about journalism and free speech. That's who I am, and it's important for my friends to know that about me. That's the persona aspect of it, okay? This is a very deep desire, a very deep motivation that human beings have. I'm a vegan who cares about social justice, and it's important that my friends know that about me, all right? Otherwise, I wouldn't be posting this on social media, okay? This is kind of like the obvious thing that a lot of marketers don't get, They think it's still about the fancy schmancy stuff, and it's not. It's really about understanding what people want to share, how they want to look to their friends. And then UNICEF. I'm a nurse that cares about access to healthcare in Africa, and it's important to me that my friends know that. Okay? So we have to think, how can we make our supporters look a certain way, and how does that associate with our cause, right? So this is all very theoretical. It sounds great, right? So now we're going to get a little bit more tactical, okay? And we've all heard the term probably today, content marketing. And if you're new to marketing and you don't have any experience or very little experience, which is basically this whole room, you feel like, or you might assume that, our job is just to post stuff. Just post stuff. But, hey, it's 9 o'clock in the morning. We haven't updated Facebook. What should we post? Right? Thinking on your feet. Let's just make something up. Throw spaghetti against the wall. Doesn't really matter. And then the question is, well, why isn't it working? Why isn't anybody engaging with this stuff? Because it's spaghetti on the wall. It's not really, most of it isn't even sticking. Okay? So we want to start telling stories. Now, most of you, there's a great book called The Storytelling Animal. And there's another great book called Sapiens, which I highly recommend if you're into this whole geeky human kind of psychology, behavioral stuff. But essentially, storytelling is hardwired into human beings. It literally makes Homo sapien who we are compared to other animals. Okay? We are the only ones that make stuff up. We make up, there's a God. If you tell a monkey, hey, if you give more bananas to your monkey friends, then you will go into a monkey heaven after you die, and there'll be so many bananas there. The monkey's going to say, are you kidding me? They won't even understand that, first of all. You see what I'm getting at? So we're the only ones that are able to basically coordinate in massive numbers and work together, either for good or evil, based on stories. Okay? Based on stories. Money, religion, institutions, government, all this stuff, right? Marriage, that's a story, but it's a good story. There's good stories, bad stories, right? But there's fundamental fictions that we have, and we're kind of hardwired for storytelling. And I'm going to prove this with a small experiment. Once upon a time, in this small little village in western Massachusetts, you want me to finish, right? Okay? You want me to finish? I have to say, at some point, happily ever after. Right? I have to. There has to be a resolution. So that's what I mean. We are hardwired for this unconsciously, subconsciously. And it's your job to take advantage of it. Right? So check out this book if you're interested in The Storytelling Animal. It's really great. But organizations I work with, sometimes they say, well, we're not really that creative. I didn't go to film school. What do you mean storytelling? This is a nice idea. I get it. But how do we actually put it into action? And there are 3 fundamental elements to every story, and I'm going to walk you through this with examples, okay? The first is the hook, okay? The first is the hook. And this, by the way, my goal is to have you guys go back to your respective organizations and look at how you're approaching social media totally differently, okay? So for example, you're no longer going to share big, scary statistics, okay? How many people share statistics, right? Did you know that there are, 100,000 homeless kids and blah, 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 that kind of thing? It gets us upset, right? Because we work in the cause. Oh, of course, you live and breathe it. We get upset by it. But your supporters, they just don't resonate with it. It just doesn't work. In fact, the research on the fundraising research, by the way, basically says that statistics are a bummer. They will kill your fundraising campaign if you share, or if you lead with a statistic. All right? And there was a very famous fundraising study from University of Washington. This is many years ago. But again, human beings haven't changed. And when I say many years ago, I mean like maybe 5 or 10 years ago. And the study went like this. They wanted to compare two different fundraising asks. One was, there are 100,000 starving children in this African country, and you can do something right now. Okay? That was the first one. The second one was, this girl, Allison, is starving, and you can help her right now. Okay? How many people are familiar with Save the Children? That's their whole game. Okay? This, obviously we know by now, hopefully, that the second one was much better than the first one, right? In fact, it raised twice as much money as the first one. Twice as many people gave in the second example. All right? And when you think about this, it doesn't make any sense. Because clearly, 100,000 children, that's a demonstration of a greater need instead of one girl, right? Why wouldn't you give your money to 100,000 children? It's because we are hardwired for storytelling. And by definition, my definition of a hook is something that's instantly relatable, a person, okay? So when you tell stories about your organization, you want to talk about how you've impacted one person, not a community, not a family, one person, okay? So I work with several Make-A-Wish organizations across the United States, and they tell stories from different angles. They tell stories from the child's perspective. You know, wow, I get to go to Disney World, I'm so excited, this means a lot to me. I'm not able to get around that much because of my disease or whatever, and this means there's hope in that child. The parent, how many people are dads? Okay, how many people are moms? I mean, come on, don't you want your child to be happy and just to see that moment of joy and that feeling that they have limitless capability, right? So so they're telling stories from different angles. I work with Habitat for Humanity as well. They're not telling stories about we built this house for this family. They're talking about the child who now has their own bedroom, they can study, and now they have more hope for the future. The parents who feel, oh, so much less stress now we have our own home, we can finally have Thanksgiving dinner, and that means a lot to me as a father or as a mother, okay? See what I'm getting at, right? So the hook is relatable, it's instant, and it's human. It's always human, okay? Even if you are literally any nonprofit ultimately impacts people, okay? Give me an example of one that doesn't, and we can certainly chat about it. You're late. This woman is late. All right, so the hook, in this example, this is an organization, I forget the name of this organization, but they give mosquito nets, they provide mosquito nets to communities in different African countries, okay? And this is a cute little baby, right? So that's the instant connection. When we see that, we say, something happens on a very profound level where you've got our attention. But you've only got our attention just for a little bit, okay? The next piece in the story, or the framework, is a problem. You do not have an effective message unless you have a problem, okay? Every single story on the planet has a problem. Every single good story on the planet has a problem. Darth Vader, is he a problem? That guy's a problem, okay? The fact that he's Luke's father, sorry for the spoiler alert, is also another problem because Luke has to make some very tough decisions, okay? There's a very simple word that can introduce a problem, and it's until. And you can use this in all of your stories. You know, this family, this child has hopes to become an astronaut. And they were a very happy family, mom and dad and whoever were employed, and they had a great family life until something happened. Until mom lost her job. Now they are struggling. Now they need support. Now they don't know if they can make it for the future, right? Now they don't know if they can actually put their child through. All their hopes are dashed at this point, okay? That's a problem, okay? If you don't present a problem, people won't give money to you, okay? If you just say, hey, we're doing everything great, look how great it is, right? People will say, oh, looks like you're all set. We're going to move on to the next nonprofit, right? So you always have to present a problem, okay? So the problem here is this child, Thomas has lost 2 children to malaria. That's a problem, okay? He badly needed mosquito nets to protect his wife and surviving children, and thanks to the support of people like you, the supporters, he finally got them. However, hundreds of thousands of families do not have access to nets and cannot protect themselves, okay? So we're pulling in this person with a hook, we're explaining the problem, and now, so that's the example, the problem, everything was fine until there's obstacles that people have internally and externally, right? I always say problems are page turners. If you've ever read a really good novel, you keep reading because there's a major problem that you want to have resolved. Like I said before, I said once upon a time, and you guys were kind of uncomfortable until I said happily ever after. There has to be some sort of resolution. In between that, in the sandwich, the meat in the sandwich, or the veggie burger if you want, in the sandwich, is the problem, okay? So you have hook, problem, and then the payoff, okay? The payoff is the ultimate resolution of a story. Now, some people will like this word better. The payoff is otherwise known as the call to action, okay? The call to action. And by the way, a call to action is not a donate button. It's not a button with the word donate on it. And later on, I'm going to tell you that donate is actually the worst word to use on a fundraising page. Okay? Look. And then you go, oh, really? Oh, it's so great. See? I'm presenting a problem. You have to wait for the solution. Okay? Now, the payoff of the call to action, it's really important that you place the donor in the narrative. Okay? So sometimes there's a disconnect that nonprofits make with the donor. They do this unknowingly, by the way, and maybe some of you have done this, right? So let's stick with the cause of like Habitat for Humanity, okay? We're Habitat for Humanity. We build homes for families and we upgrade homes for families, and we do it best. If you support us, we're going to do such a great job, okay? So there's donor, organization, impact, okay? That's a disconnect, okay? Rather, what the donor wants is they want to make that impact directly. They can't, obviously. They can't just start building homes and whatnot. So you act as an agent of change. Your organization is basically an agent of change. But the way that you position it, or the way that you state it, is you can change this life. You can provide this family a home. You can help build a home. Help build a home. Build a stronger community. And that's it. That's the call to action, okay? Give a net, save a life. I can do this. I can save a life. I can give a net. That's me. I'm a donor. The impact. So the formula for a payoff is not donor, org, impact. It's donor impact, okay? Now, don't worry. Your name will still be associated with that great work, okay? But don't put your organization in the narrative, okay? Don't say, give to us and we'll do the great work. We've been doing it for 100 years. We do it better than anyone. And give to us and we'll keep doing it. No. You want to tell the donor that they're going to have a direct impact. And that's why they give. Now, so this, in a sense, it doesn't make sense logically. Some of you might be thinking, well, John, come on. They really do give money to a nonprofit, right? And then the nonprofit takes care of all the work. Come on, we all know that, right? But we're talking about something that happens emotionally, all right? So this whole thing about getting people to donate, they don't do it because it's reasonable, as I stated before. They do it because it's emotional. We have to drive them emotionally, not reasonably. Remember, 100,000 children versus one starving girl? That's not reasonable. That's not logic, but it's emotional. And that's how we need to approach this. So the payoff, again, it places the donor in the impact. Triple whose impact? The donor's impact. Triple your impact. Okay? And so these are just some examples here. Let me see. So the benefit of this framework is that now, instead of worrying about posting content, we're actually thinking about it a little bit more, right? We're also thinking about the wealth, the incredible limitless wealth of stories that we have in our storehouse. We have a storehouse of incredible stories, and we can tell those stories, okay? Now, we can get into, sometimes because of HIPAA and privacy and security and all that stuff, you can't tell people's names and all that stuff, right? But you can still use an anonymous name and a picture and kind of disassociate to still tell a really powerful story, okay? But what you want to do is, rather than focusing on each network, Instagram, we got to update Instagram. We haven't updated that in 2 weeks, and we said we were going to. We started it, but we're not continuing it. We're going to update Facebook and Twitter and Snapchat, all these separate things. Rather, what's the story that we're telling across all the networks, right? What's the story that we're telling across all the networks? It's a big mistake to think that your donors are separate from your Facebook fans. We have our donors over here, and our Facebook fans over here, and Snapchat, all our Snapchat kids are over here, and people who are subscribing to our email newsletter are all over here. No, there's actually a lot of overlap, okay? And you can even ask Don Draper. Don Draper, this is still true from a marketing perspective. People are more likely to take action if they're exposed to a message from multiple sources, okay? So if you're only using one channel to tell your fundraising story, if you're only using Facebook, you're doing a disservice to yourself. You want to use email, you want to use Twitter, you want to use Facebook, you want to use ads, you want to tell your story across all of the networks simultaneously, okay? That way, you look like you have your act together, right? Someone gets your email newsletter, they open it up, and there's a story about this girl, that story that you're focusing on, and then they also see pictures of that girl, maybe different pictures or whatever, on Facebook. So they're exposed to this idea across the networks, okay? So let's dive in a little. Any questions so far? Comments? Yeah.
On that last point, is it critical that across all your platforms you're repeating the same story?
Yeah.
At the same time?
Okay, so when we say repeat, I'm glad you brought this up. We're not going to copy and paste the same thing across all the networks. We're going to tell the story in different ways depending upon the network, okay? So for example, Instagram is primarily pictures, okay? I mean, there's a little bit of text and there's a ton of hashtags perhaps, but it's really focused on the image, okay? You can share a video on Instagram as well, but it can't be longer than a minute. So each network has its own constraints, and also each network has its own culture. You wouldn't post something on Facebook that says, retweet this, right? So Twitter has its own little language, short URLs, retweets, and all that stuff. And fortunately, now hashtags are so common, it's almost like a part of our language in a sense. Hashtags are a very interesting element of language because they contain a lot of stuff, I don't know what the popular hashtags are this morning, but it's able to capture a quick idea in a short statement, okay? So there's a cultural aspect. Go ahead.
I just want to maybe clarify something that your point about the statistics.
Yeah.
And I think these examples of stories that one on the left, every 2 minutes a child dies from malaria, is a statistic.
Yes.
But it's a relatable statistic. So
Yes.
I think
Well, actually, what's interesting about this, I'm glad you brought it up. That is a statistic, but it's a different statistic. Well, it's what's unique about it is that it's a statistic about how many children? How many children are in the picture?
One.
Okay, so that works in that case.
So that was kind of my point, where I feel especially for some of if we're working with communities of people that have scientists or people who, I feel there are communities in which statistics work, but what I think that you're doing there is making them relatable by using that, knocking them down so that they're sort of at a human scale or an individual scale rather than leaving them at their sort of meta level.
Yeah.
I think for some people that your work is being backed up by something that is proven is really important to show.
Yeah, absolutely. So statistics are important. Obviously, doing research and all that is super important. I'm not discounting that. That's really important. However, I will say that there's a reason why scientists have a hard time pushing the agenda of global warming, okay? Because they have a difficult time telling a story. about that. And scientists will even admit that. They'll say it's really hard to get the ball moving because we can't really tell a compelling story. There is a really great book called I forget the name of it, but it's a short book written by a scientist. It's kind of fictional, but it's based on projections of global warming. And it's not a pretty story, but it's an important story. So tell stories across all networks. Now this image right here, the one where it says every 2 minutes a child dies from malaria. Imagine if we saw that without the picture. It wouldn't be that compelling, right? So pictures are almost like a lock and key mechanism that goes into this unconscious, right? When we see a picture, we've all heard the phrase, a picture says 1,000 words, or a picture equals 1,000 words. It is true, right? There's so much more to a picture than just words, okay? So in terms of your posts on Facebook and Instagram stories, these are strategies basically how to tell better, how to basically publish better stories that engage people. The first is to listen first, okay? That's the rule with social media. That's the rule with any marketing today. Listen first. What do your people care about, okay? Who are your people? Obviously, we talked about that earlier. We have community, network, and the crowd, okay? What do they care about? Now, be careful with that one. What do they care about versus what you think they care about? These are often very different things, okay? You'd be so surprised. And I encourage all of you, if you can, at every moment, ask a donor why they gave. Why did they give? Why did you really give? What made you decide to support our organization? What do they want? Often, these are unconscious things that people want. We don't even know what we ourselves want half the time, right? But what do they want? They want to look and appear a certain way. They want to live a meaningful life, and so forth. Okay? So listen first. Now, and I'll show you some examples of how to listen, like tools for listening as well. Where do you intersect? So this is what you need to be talking about. What your supporters want and what you want. That's really the intersect. Okay? So that's why the story framework is so perfect, because your supporters want to hear stories about real impact that affect real people. Okay? The individual child who now has their own bedroom and now they're happy, they're more secure in a home built by from Habitat for Humanity. Okay? Supporters care about that. You care about that as well. So that's a sweet spot. Okay? Be useful. So I work with an education foundation, actually a preschool education foundation. They like the term early childhood education, by the way. And I always remind them that nobody talks about parents. They don't say, I'm going to bring my kid to the early childhood education place. They say, no, I'm going to bring my child to preschool. Okay? So when we talk back to listening, make sure you use the words that your people are using. I work with a healthcare think tank in New York State, and they're, of course, healthcare think tank. They're all like super smart analysts, and doing all their research and publishing their fancy white papers about the Affordable Care Act. And I said to them, how many people really use the Affordable Care Act? How many people, real people, really use this term? Not many people. Some people say ACA, some people say Obamacare. Obamacare is more known. And you can find this out, don't take my word for it, if you use a tool like Google Trends. How many people have used Google Trends? So Google Trends, it's called, and I'm not going to give you the website because you can Google it, okay? But it's Google Trends, and you can compare two or more terms. So this client that I have, I said, let me show you. I typed in Affordable Care Act, I typed in Obamacare, and they were like, their jaws dropped to the ground, and I said, listen, if you want more people to find you and engage with you, you have to use the language of the people. Same thing with this education place. You got to use preschool. I know that the teachers who worked so hard to get that degree, they'd rather use the word early childhood education. That's what the schools use, and that's what they use. That's their professional title and so forth, but it's really preschool. Now back to being useful. There's a reason why I was talking about the education, the preschool foundation. So part of their mission is actually to empower parents to support their kids, okay? And so I said, well, that's great. how does that happen? Show me. And they said, well, we have workshops and whatnot. So now I said, well, we have to really shift up, and their problem is they need to grow their audience and engage their audience. So we're starting to publish a series of guides for parents, a quick kind of preschool prep guides for your child. The child's not going to read it, but it gets into like nutrition, social things, playing games, reading with your child, different, very tactical kind of tips to help a child achieve these things, and that's being useful, right? So if your mission is to serve your community, ask yourself, how can we provide this valuable information with social media, right? How can we educate people through video, through short guides, connecting people to a resource? So many of you may not have bandwidth to actually create ebooks and videos and all that. But you can find reputable sources and you can share that with your audience, okay? So be useful. Be a conversation starter, okay? So what do I mean by conversation starter? Okay, obviously social media is two-way communication. And again, this is, an example of how marketing, thinking, and professionals haven't really made the shift so much. The thinking is still one way. We post it on Facebook and we're done. Let's move on. If they like, comment, that's fine, we'll follow up later. But there's not necessarily a seeking of understanding, like a two-way dialogue. So creating conversation starters. Conversations equal connections. There's been a lot of research on how to get more comments, for example, on social media. And the research, one research said, if you ask questions, you're more likely to get an answer. Okay? Can you believe this type of research that happens that we already know? But my point is we have to do this, right? We have to ask questions. Ask for their opinions. I worked with an ALS organization, very small ALS organization, and they felt really, I felt bad for them. They felt like they had to be the sole provider of all information about ALS. If you're an ALS, if you're newly diagnosed, we're the ones, we're supposed to provide all this information. And they were tired. They were beaten up and tired. They couldn't keep up because they took on way too much. So I said, well, listen, you have a you have a pretty good Facebook community. Seems like they're kind of active. Why not ask them what they think? So now their strategy is, hey, here's one way to reduce muscle tension or muscle pain. What's your way? What's your way to solve this problem, right? So I can tell you right now, your community, the people that support your organization, they want to share their ideas. They want to share their stories. They want to share what they think. If there's knowledge, they want to share that knowledge. Ask for opinions, ask for help, and seeking to understand. So these obviously are what I'm talking about. These are general principles to approach social media differently, okay? And then, as I said before, be a storyteller. I love the picture of this bench. This says, Bench for Book Lovers, established February 27th, 1991. Barbara, I'm just going to read the first names. Barbara, Pat, Dinny Morse is her name, Laura, Lee Strong, and Susan, okay? These 6 women, I'm telling you, they have some serious stories. You can tell. There's a whole bench dedicated to these women, okay? So we talked about this before, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it now, but basically when you tell a story, focus on, go through what you're publishing and ask yourself, do we have a hook? A hook is a person, okay? That instant emotional connection. Is there a problem? Are we talking about a problem? Are we talking about a payoff? Now, do you have to do this for every single social media update? No, you don't have to. Some updates will focus on a payoff. Hey, but there's an implied story. So for example, this little boy now has his own room and he can achieve all these really great things. Congratulations. Or with Special Olympics, this child, never thought he could run this race, but he did, and look at how happy he is, right? We could say that is the payoff, the conclusion of the story, but implied in that is the problem and the beginning and the hook and all that stuff, right? If we have a victory and that we're talking about, we automatically have a story embedded into that, okay? Be a conductor. That's another idea. Be a conductor. So, again, and I mentioned this before, a big problem that organizations have is that they post, let's just update Instagram with all the Instagram cool little pics of food that we eat or whatever, or our coffee maker or some random stuff. And then Facebook, let's just post a bunch of links to our website. And then so it's all scattershot all over the place, different content. There's not a consistent story across the networks. So we want to focus on being a conductor. I went to Berklee School of Music. How many musicians do we have in the room? Okay, so you know conductor, right? Conductor's the guy with the wand, right? I always wonder why he has the wand. He just uses his hand, I don't know. But I didn't study conducting at Berklee, right? But anyhow, he goes 1, 2, 3, 4, and he counts and so forth. And he's relying on all the musicians to listen to him and be in unison, right? So the tuba, we could say in this metaphor, it's a metaphor by the way, the tuba is Facebook, the flutes are Twitter, the French horns, if there are any French horns, they're Instagram, let's say. So they all have to play together, okay, that's the point. The editorial calendar, which I'll talk about later, is the sheet music. How many people use an editorial calendar? Okay. Wow. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, more people. Good. All right, good. So editorial calendar is great, and actually, it's great. Planning is very boring. Okay? Planning is boring. Social media is really exciting, but planning is so boring. Oh, do we really have to meet and plan things? Yes, you do. Okay? Get coordinated. Use a calendar that talks about your key dates and so forth, and publish stories leading up to that. Okay? So again, editorial calendar is like the sheet music. Supporters, they hate noise. Again, they're being exposed to your organization from multiple channels: email, Twitter, Snapchat, Facebook, whatever it is, your blog, your website, PR, newspaper, so forth. And if it's all random, it sounds like noise. So make sure there's some consistency across the network. For your Valley Gives Day, I would recommend that all of you find the one story that you're really going to lead with, okay? The one story you're going to lead with. And I'm going to tell you a quick example. So I work with a breast cancer organization in New York City, and they have their annual Walk for the Cure. It's Susan G. Komen in New York City, Greater NYC. And every year they had the walkathon, and they got mediocre results for their online fundraising. And so I started working with them, and I said, listen, you guys are lacking a story. There's no story. They were going forward with breast cancer statistics. Here's a cool pink ribbon. And by the way, is anybody here with a breast cancer organization? No?
Cancer, all cancer.
Okay, great. All kinds of cancer, got it. So breast cancer organizations, they get all hyped up in October about the pink ribbon. What that really is we want to be invisible, okay? If you say that's our message for October, a pink ribbon, you're basically saying we want to be invisible, because every other breast cancer organization is going to have a pink ribbon. You have to differentiate yourself, okay? So don't do the pink ribbon invisible trick, okay? You don't want to be invisible on Valley Gives, okay? And so for you, so let me finish the story about the breast cancer organization. So we were talking about the story. You've got to find a really good story. And we found one about this grandmother named Barbara, and her story was she wanted to overcome breast cancer so she could see her grandkids. That's all she wanted. She didn't care about herself. She's a strong woman. She can handle anything, but she wanted to live to see her grandkids, period. And there's a lot more to that, but basically the story, that was essentially the focus. And so we published that story in several different ways: pictures, video, and resharing and so forth. And they even had a big blog post on their website about it. They had a picture of her featured on the fundraising page. And their online fundraising result year over year was an increase of 33%. Okay? 33%. Now, I helped them with a lot of other things, but when I asked the executive director, I said, 33% is pretty big for the online result, right? I said, what do you think made this change? And she said, it was Barbara. She said, we started telling a totally different story, and people started reacting very differently. And I've worked with so many other organizations where they make that one shift. They really hone in on that story, and they tell it across all the networks in a coordinated fashion with editorial calendar, it goes a long way, okay? Now, I have a couple of templates, actually not in these documents right here. I don't have an editorial calendar, but I do have one here in the link. So, well, the link is in the slide. You're going to get the slides later on, okay? But basically, it's an Excel spreadsheet. You can download it, make it yours, and it's a very straightforward content calendar for the year that you can use. Some other organizations I work with, they use a Google Calendar, literally a Google Calendar, and they're just kind of typing stuff in, and they share that, a private calendar with a few stakeholders, and that's how they manage their stories and their messaging, right? But the point is you want to have kind of a coordinated plan for how you're telling your stories over, a 30-day period or maybe a 60-day period. Number 7, be human, okay? People don't engage with brands. I know several people actually logged into Facebook this morning. How many people at least opened Facebook this morning? Okay, great. I mean, I would say it might be the majority here, right? So Facebook, in a sense, is kind of like almost a morning newspaper that is totally not verified, like really bad facts and bad stuff. It's mostly a lot of garbage. That says a lot about my friends, right? No, it's just random, it's a lot of stuff on Facebook. And people use Facebook to connect with people, not nonprofits. And I think that's really important, is that when someone is opening up their iPhone, they're still under the sheets in the morning, their thought isn't, hey, I wonder what my favorite nonprofit is doing. They're not thinking that. They're thinking, what are my friends up to, right? And what you want is, again, you want your community to share your stories with their friends. So then they see that story from their friend. Oh, Joe's sharing another story about that cancer organization. It's so great, right? Or Joe's talking about Valley Gives again, right? So be human. What does this mean? Be human means, it's very simple in some ways. Reply quickly and cheerfully. If someone leaves a comment on your Facebook post, as soon as you can, reply quickly and cheerfully. Listen and have empathy. We can do this because we're human beings, right? So we can have empathy, we can have compassion, we can also have a sense of humor, okay? Here's one of my favorite examples of a reply from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service Midwest region, the ultimate bureaucratic organization, okay? U.S. Fish and Wildlife, right? So Neil Patrick, I'm just going to read this because some of you might not be able to see it. Neil Patrick says, he's complaining, okay? He's kind of a hater. He says, the more I go to your properties you're supposed to protect, the more I realize you're a useless government entity. You might as well call the properties under your control dog parks. So this guy is obviously not happy for some reason. And so the reply is, your apostrophe R-E, okay? Pointing out the spelling mistake that Neil made, okay? And then, so Neil replies, haha, touche, okay? So right away, his perception of this organization, it's really dissipated his anger, for sure, right? And he may still have the same thoughts, but at least the door is open, okay? Now, I'm not saying, don't, be careful how you do something like this.
Wendy's.
What's that?
Wendy's Twitter is savage and wonderful.
Oh, great. Okay. Oh, yeah, Wendy's. That's a great example. Yeah, excellent.
People share pages and pages of their Twitter conversations.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's great. Yes, having a sense of humor is really great. Now, the other thing is that don't feel like, in this case, they did take a little bit of a risk. I think it was a pretty safe risk, actually. And I know the woman who actually manages social media for these guys, and she's got a sense of humor and whatever, and so this is good. But also remember that there are other people that will come to your side if things get rough, okay? And who are these people? These are your community, your Facebook fans and so forth. So I work with a Jewish organization, and they were publishing something about refugees or something, and I had a meeting with them, and they said, look at all these comments. What do we do about these haters? Some people saying, Israel, blah, 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 this back and forth. And their community came forward, and they were basically handling the comments, okay? So keep that in mind. Your people are willing, if you have a good, healthy community, they will take a sword for you. You don't have to take the sword all the time, okay?
Can I
So,
ask you a question?
yes.
I noticed that under that header that person commented as themselves, and sometimes you have the option of commenting as your page.
Great.
Does that make a huge difference in this kind of?
Yes, always
tip?
comment as your page, not yourself, which actually leads me to another important tip. Do not use, how many people update social media on their iPhone or Android? Okay. Do not use the Facebook app to update Facebook, okay? It's a no, well, I don't say it's a no-no, but it can get very confusing. Am I posting to my own page? How can I reply to a comment? And so forth. There's a totally separate app called Pages Manager, okay? It's a little app, well, they're all little, I guess, on the screen, right? It's an app, it has like an orange flag on it, and it's called Pages Manager. It's made by Facebook, and it's specifically intended to manage Facebook pages. So what I love about this, it's a totally separate app. So it avoids all confusion, and you can reply to comments, you can see your insights, you can look at analytics and all that stuff on your page. But always reply as your page to comments on your page, okay? So be human. 5 types of social media updates you should always be posting. We have a couple more things and we're going to take a break. The first one, as I said before, Conversation Starter. This is just an example. This is an organization, Fight Colorectal Cancer, and they have a regular theme every Tuesday. They call it Good News Tuesday, and they say share your good news for the week. So they've started this regular theme, people come to expect it, and people share their own stories. What's brilliant about this is that, yes, it creates a lot of engagement, they get tons of comments, but also it's a great place for them to go and find potential stories, right? When someone says, I had colorectal cancer and I did this and this and I'm really determined to beat it, that's a great story, right? So they can find this, a good source of stories. Trending news. The other challenge, I think, with nonprofits and, well, marketers in general is that, again, what's our first job is to listen first, right? Or listen first. So in a sense, we kind of have to keep our ear to the ground. We have to always know, what are people talking about? ACLU, you guys are probably familiar with ACLU, and everything's happening in politics. I'm not going to get political, but everything is happening. The ACLU is on top of every single news bit that you can imagine. They're sending out an email, this just happened in Congress, we've got to stand up, this just happened. These guys are paying attention, okay? Now, you may not be affected by news every single day, but it is important to find out what are people talking about, what's trending, okay? So, some tools to use for trending news, to discover trending news. I would recommend BuzzSumo is a tool. It's called BuzzSumo.com. They have a free version and a paid version, but it's a way to automatically monitor any mention of your cause or keywords. And also, there's always Google Alerts, which are great. Twitter is a real-time news feed of like anything that's happening right now, so you can look at Twitter. But what do you want to constantly monitor, right? Monitoring, it means listening, basically. You always want to listen for mentions of your nonprofit, okay? Mentions of your key executives. If they're in the news and you're in charge of communication and your executive director walks in and says, hey, did you hear about my mention? And you say no, you might want to pack your bags. That's your job. Job 1 is to know that before the executive director knows it, okay? So mentions of the executive director, the organization, any keywords around your cause, like homelessness or cancer, specific cancers, the specific keywords that people are using. And again, use their language, right? I talked about Obamacare versus Affordable Care Act, preschool versus early childhood education. Use the language of the people and kind of monitor that. And also look at the competition. The other organizations, when I say competition, I don't mean competition. I mean your peers, okay? Other organizations that are kind of doing similar work that you can network with, that you can pair up with and partner with. Find out what are they talking about. What are they talking about as well, all right? Breaking news. as well. So keep your ear to the ground on all that. Entertainment. This is another type of update that you should always be posting. So sadly, yes, we have to entertain our people, okay? They want to be entertained. And what does this mean? Entertaining means simply offering up something like the Nature Conservancy. They say, Happy Caption Tuesday. Who's got a good caption for this? Okay, so caption contest, and anything like a quiz. If you are, how many people are familiar with the Cornell Lab of Ornithology? Okay, these guys are amazing, actually. If you go to the Facebook page later, or even by 12 today, I guarantee you they will have at least 30 posts from other people on their page. 30 strangers or their community. They show up and they post pictures. And what do they post pictures of?
Birds.
Birds! Here's a bird. I like birds and I like photography. That's perfect mix for these guys. All they have to do is they post a picture of a bird and they say, who can guess what bird this is? That's their job, okay? I mean, they post more than that, but my point is that they're engaging their community in something that they really care about, but it's almost like a game in some ways. You know, can you guess what bird this is? And they have a ton of photos that are already posted on their Facebook page every single day. They can pick that, get permission, and then share it with their community. You know, if someone has trouble naming a bird, hey, we're having trouble naming this bird. Who can guess what it is? And then, boom, tons of comments, guaranteed. And they're arguing. No, it's not that bird, it's this bird. And they really get intense, you know. It makes me, reminds me of that movie, The Big Year. What was that movie, The Big Year, with Steve Martin and Jack Black? The Birder movie? Oh man, you have to see it. Oh, it's so great. So entertainment, and then number 4, praise about donors and volunteers, okay? You will make your nonprofit instantly look amazing if you talk about how amazing your donors and volunteers are. Automatically it makes you look good, okay? Now, how many people, I'm just curious, do we have any development people here? Development directors? Development people? Okay. So here's an example. I'm going to read this post. It says, congratulations to Olivia who raised $32.60. Okay? Now, I'm not saying you guys, but some development people think that this is a waste of time because it's not that much money. We want our people to raise $100 and up. That's all that we care about. $100 and up. So we don't want to think about this, right? However, this has the opposite effect. When you publish something like this, then the fans say, wow, $32.60. Imagine if someone raised $1,000, how they would treat them. So in other words, look at how they treat their donors regardless of the donation amount, right? They're praising the donors, the actual act of giving, not the amount of giving, okay? And these are just a couple of examples here. It makes you look great, by the way, by association. You're kind of guilty by association. Look at how great our donors are. We love our donors. Our volunteers are the best volunteers. You automatically look great. This is like an easy one to do. Number 5, outcome stories or impact stories. The research shows, and this is again some kind of research, somebody spent a lot of money on this research proving something that we already know. 53% of online donors identified achieving and communicating measurable results as prominent in their decision making to give again. Really? Whoa. So you mean people will give again if they have more confidence that you're actually doing your job? That's amazing. So, but where this ties into is social media is the place where you can share these outcome stories, right? This best type of outcome story, again, is like before and after, right? Here's a perfect one. Before, drowned cat. After, clean kitty, right? Drowned kitty, wet, we don't even, probably smells, right? Now we're going to give him a bath and clean him up, and now we have a cute kitty. This demonstrates instantly why this organization exists, okay? This is a public service announcement on pictures. Please do not publish these type of pictures. People standing next to each other, even if they have their arms around each other, right? Look at all of our board members. Oh, they're so great looking, right? Come on, there's nothing happening there, nothing, okay? Pictures without a description. I've seen that too. This preschool organization, they published a bunch of pictures of these kids in preschool doing amazing things, making some cool stuff, but there was no reference point. Just a quick sentence about, Billy and Jane are making a dinosaur from paper mache. Oh, that's cool. So you frame it. Never publish a picture without including a description. And don't publish pictures of cats, even though you're a cat lover, unless you're an animal shelter. That's the only way you should publish cat, okay? Or if you are a senior center and you have a senior who loves their little kitty, then yes, publish a picture of the senior with the kitty, okay? And by the way, actually, how many people work for an animal shelter? I'm curious. Okay. All right. Yeah, I love animal shelters. My favorite. But I work with, do you know Best Friends Animal Society? Okay. So they actually had a really interesting revelation, a little tiny revelation, where they were publishing pictures of dogs and cats that were beautiful, great photographer, taking great pictures and publishing these pictures. And of course, they received a lot of engagement. But then, at one point, they started publishing a series of pictures of people with their new pet. Okay? Engagement went through the roof. And why? Because those pictures tell a story. The cat alone, not so much of a story. A person sitting there waiting for their cat, not so much a story. You put them together, you have a story, right? So don't post those pictures. Now, instead, when you're picking out pictures, don't just post all of the pictures from your event, right? So that's 95% of the pictures you should delete. I'm telling you, just delete the picture, move on. They're not interesting. They're just not interesting. Pick the pictures that show action. So again, Habitat for Humanity as an example. They have a whole series of pictures of people standing side by side in front of this beautiful house they just built, and that's great, but it's not that interesting. What's more interesting is two people holding a ladder, two people working together to construct the house. A team of people, a group of people. So show action, show relationship, like the owner with the cat, show problems, and then show results, okay? So when someone achieves something, take a picture of that and show it. That automatically includes a story. A problem as well automatically includes a story, okay?